All right, welcome to Manpower Great Lakes Team Focus. This is our October focus. We are going to be focusing on candidate ghosting and why to avoid as a candidate. I am Andy Kramer from Manpower, the direct hire team, the Great Lakes, and I am also joined by my teammates, Megan Pavlicek and Nicki Ford. Megan, how are you doing?
Good, Andy. How are you?
Hey, it's October, fall. I love the fall. I love everything that is Halloween and all that stuff, except the ghosting, and we're going to be talking about that. Also, I'm glad to have you, Nikki. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I love October too. Fall is one of my favorite seasons.
And is recruiters who are working with candidates. We wanted to start this and have a chance to just connect with candidates on what we're seeing as recruiters, and also just give you a little advice as a candidate when you're facing the market. Obviously, there's a lot of options out there as far as jobs. You want to make sure it's the right job. But let's go ahead and talk about something as recruiters that's frustrating, and we're going to kind of explain that we know where you're coming from, candidates, and some of the things that you deal with. But as we kind of get into, when you find a candidate or find a job that you like, and a recruiter has reached out for you, you may get to that point where obviously you like the job, you hear about it, but sometimes it's just not something you're really feeling at that moment. So you ghost. And obviously we're in October, Halloween. So talking about ghosting, candidate ghostings, 5 reasons why. So number 1 here, Megan, I'll let you read that one.
Sure. Lack of excitement about the role.
I know when I'm, talking to you about your roles, I know you're usually pretty excited about your roles, but have you run across this?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that you can kind of gauge in that initial conversation as a candidate with the recruiter is just how are you feeling about the position? The recruiter might be super excited. We usually are excited about the opportunity that we're presenting. And so just remembering that as the recruiter's talking to you and their excitement, seeing if your excitement level matches, if your wants and needs align with the position, and just kind of keeping what you are looking for as a candidate top of mind, and not trying to be a people pleaser, and just match the excitement of the recruiter.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a great candidate with a lot of skills, you are going to be sought after. And I'm sure you're having a ton of recruiters reaching out to you. In as far as a candidate, that can bog you down. But Nikki, as far as when you're approaching a candidate, how do you try to make a role exciting, or really try to explain that role to the candidate?
Andy, I really try to share that I pick out things from their resume, and highlight on their skills and the progressiveness of their skills. You can kind of tell the things that they've, been really working hard on and that has gotten better over the years. So I really try to focus on their skills and help try to bring out what they're looking for, what's important to them as far as career path, and get them excited that way. You speak to some candidates and they're really excited to, have a career path to move forward. But some candidates are interested in just staying where they're at and doing a great job at it and just becoming the best at that. So I try to pull that out.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because the grass isn't always greener. We understand that as recruiters. We're not, especially with the roles that we work with. We're all direct hire roles, and we like to establish relationships with the candidates to really find that mutual match. Because for us, we want that long-term fit for candidates and for the company. We're working for both, and I think that's important. But when you just kind of hearing from a lot of recruiters, I think it's can you just get a little bit wary of who you're talking to. But when we are contacting for a position, we have a role in mind for you. I think that's important. And obviously it may not be a fit, but then we can also think of something else that might be down the road for you. But we really have something that we're targeting you for, and that's something we want to make sure to focus on. When you look at the role, sometimes as a candidate, you may get an email, and I've gotten emails as well from recruiters, and you just kind of like, okay, am I a fit? Confusion about the role. And Megan, when you kind of send out your communications about roles and then talk to the candidates, what are you doing to make sure to explain the role and the position in the company to the candidate?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing is just making it very clear what the qualifications are for the position. When I'm talking to clients, for example, I'll ask like, what are the absolute must-haves? And so when communicating with candidates, making sure that I'm communicating those must-haves with them. Again, kind of what Nicki had said, looking at their skills and making sure that they align with the position. And then just really clear communication, asking candidates if they have questions and just making sure that they know no question is a silly question. I'm really that person for them to feel like they can have an open dialogue with. I'm not interviewing them per se. We're having a conversation. And so just kind of being that down to earth person that they know they can open up to, ask questions to. And I'm always upfront if I don't know the answer. I won't pretend like I do. And so I'm happy to relay those questions to clients, and clients are always happy to answer those questions for us. They want to make sure that we have all the information possible to deliver the right kinds of candidates. So just being transparent and I'm a human, they're a human, and just kind of relating on that level and knowing that they can be open and honest with us.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to tell if you get a phone call from someone who is an actual human, as opposed to just an automated call from a company, and that's why obviously we try to do that personal touch with it, and not being afraid to ask the questions, because we realize that it's important. This is a huge decision from the candidate to make a change. Obviously there's a reason you're kind of looking at that, but it's also important for the clients, our clients, to make sure that you like the role as well. Because I mean, we've had it, everyone's had it before, where you get someone in a role and then they get it, week, maybe a few days in, and they're like, well, this isn't what I thought. So just making sure that there's that match. Nicki, what are some things that you do to kind of really explain the role in the company?
Yeah, sure, Andy. I like to piggyback off a little bit with what Megan said, laying down expectations of the role, so sharing those requirements are definitely important, even, industries, making sure they're okay with the industry and the work environment. Sometimes culture is very important to our candidates. So give them as much information as I can about the culture, and laying down the expectations that the client have for that role and that person in that role.
I love that you brought up the culture, because it's not just a static company, static role. They gotta have to make sure that they fit and the company fits with their goals and where they're going for their career as well.
Yeah, is really important. Sometimes that's one of their most important things, is a culture fit. But people are looking for these long-term roles where they can stay and retire from. And so having a good culture is important to them as well as the client.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting, Nicki, I think, we, it's important, the compensation, the financial part of it. And I know for me, I'm one that I try to get that out of the way right away, because I think it's important as a recruiter to develop a relationship, with the candidate, to make them trust you. What I try to do right away is say, okay, I do have a role, and here, I want to know what your target is, because I want to make sure I don't want to waste your time. And is that, Nicki, how do you kind of do that with compensation and benefits, kind of explaining to the candidates?
Well, absolutely. Compensation, we're recruiters, so that's like in the forefront of our mind, when we speak to candidates, and a lot of times it's in the forefront of their mind as well. So I ask them what's their target range, what will you take, and I will double back at the end of the conversation and say, if it's anything in between here, because a lot of times they like to give you a range and not an exact number. So if it's anywhere in between here, would you take it without me having to call you back? Would you take this without me, without a lot of back and forth, conversations? So really nail that down, make sure that they're okay with what they tell me in the beginning. And also let them know that everything is not concrete, because you don't want to scare off a candidate and say, you're going to be locked in and this is it. But just, we need to have an idea of what to bring to the client, so they know, if this is something that's going to work with their overhead.
I think it's important too that our candidates know that we are advocating for them.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times, I'll talk to a candidate and they'll say, well, what's this job offering? And so they're kind of like worried about, us lowballing them. But Megan, obviously we're trying to, make a good match, right? Like, how do you do that with compensation, with the candidate?
Absolutely. I just like to lead with it and being really transparent. And this is something I say probably in every conversation, but I always will tell candidates the range, and I'll ask them, like, where are you looking to be? Because we're like, nobody's working for fun. We all have a objective here. And so just again, kind of being really transparent with them. And again, knowing that I'm the recruiter, I'm not the client. You can, be upfront and honest with me about what your expectations are, and kind of what Nicki said, hoping to get some specifics from them on what exactly they're looking for, so that when it does come to offer time, they're making a good impression, with A, not having to do the back and forth, and B, just so that they're getting what's going to make them excited about taking a new position. Like you had mentioned before, Andy, this is like a big next step for people. I mean, a job change is a life change. And so just being aligned on expectations right in the forefront, so that when it comes to offer time, it's something that's super exciting for them. And obviously that doesn't always happen, but like you said, we're advocates for them. So as long as we presented them at a number that they are really truly looking for, if there's a situation where the offer comes and it's not exactly what was expected, we can go back and say, hey, but they have all of these skills and this is what they're looking for. So is there any way that we can negotiate that, versus going in too low and then trying to negotiate that at the end, when they said initially they were okay with a lower number?
Absolutely. And these last two I wanted to bring up, these are important from our perspective. We want to know the whole picture. Obviously, you get some candidates will ghost you and just say, well, a family member has died for the third time or whatever. We as recruiters, we get all these things. Be honest as you can with us. You're not going to hurt our feelings. We want to advocate for you. If something happens, like I actually just had, this week, I had a candidate, say his kid was sick and needed to reschedule his interview. And we're willing to do that, be advocates that way. Nicki, have you, gone through some of the negative parts of like the personal circumstances? Maybe the candidate maybe has made something up or said anything that just seems a little fishy?
Yeah, I've actually had an experience where it seemed fishy. It seemed very fishy. The candidate, went dark, and we had this great communication, and just all of a sudden just gone dark, and it just left me wondering. And I was just kind of dumbfounded a little bit, like, I thought we had building this great rapport, and all of a sudden, you went dark, and, it was crunch time. So what come to find out, it was actually something very serious. And I didn't hear from the candidate in close to a month, to be honest with you, but the candidate, because of the rapport that was genuinely made, and I didn't make it up, in my head, feeling things that wasn't really there. They came back to me, and we were able to actually work together again. Now, obviously, I've had the other ones too, where it's something seemed made up, and it was actually made up, but communication is definitely key. You don't want to burn these bridges, with recruiters. You want to continue to build on these relationships, because you just never know when time may come, you may need them again, or you may even want to recommend a family or a friend to that person because of the relationship that you built with this recruiter.
Absolutely. And obviously you've done that as well. Megan, you've kind of gone through some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just really what Nicki said, like communication is key, just being upfront, like we do understand. And especially if you have things that truly make sense, like, after I thought about it, the compensation just isn't where it needs to be, the shift isn't right, whatever it may be. We definitely understand. We all have families, personal lives, things that, would be deal breakers for us. So just being upfront about deal breakers ahead of time, or even just if things change, being upfront about it, it'll be okay. We'll get over it.
Well, speaking of the last one, kind of getting over it. Obviously, we realize that when we contact candidates, especially ones that have fantastic resumes, like many of the ones that we connect with for the direct hire roles have, you're going to be you've been contacted by several recruiters for several different positions. Sometimes it is hard to kind of keep things straight. And we realize that there may be changes in professional circumstances. Maybe you have an offer that here's a company that you really want to take. Or I think it's important for us that we want to hear what you have going on. Do you have an interview going on? Do you have a phone interview? Where are you at in the process? I think that is all helpful, because we're not just trying to put someone in a job. We want to make sure it's a good fit all around, as we said. And so, Nicki, how would you like to kind of address that with candidates, or hear from candidates if there's some professional changes within their circumstances?
That's great. Andy, that's how I normally end my calls. Is I always ask a candidate if they have any active interviews, and where they are in that process, if they are in second interviews and third, so it'll also give me an idea as to where they are, if they're just had phone calls, that stuff is important. Yeah. And it's important to communicate that with your recruiter, so we can also, balance out how to, present to you, because this client may just love you, and we need to let them know, hey, you may lose this wonderful candidate if you don't act fast, because they are actively interviewing and they're in the second part of their interview or third, and they could be close to an offer, so I'm able to share that information with the client as well.
And what about you, Megan? How do you kind of work with candidates on trying to learn this as much as you can about their professional changes? Yeah.
I just let them know, again, to be upfront with me. Like Nicki said, that's a good way to also help speed up the process with a client that they might be really interested in, but they have several offers. They have to make a decision on the offers that they have. And so just empathizing and understanding that, this is not the only opportunity in front of them. And also another thing I always say is, trying to make the timing align with maybe these several offers so that they can kind of look at everything in front of them and make the best decision for them. So just showing too that, like, I understand that this opportunity is not the only opportunity in front of you. There may be other opportunities that are a good fit. So that way we can align expectations and they can have everything to look at in front of them and make the best decision that works for them, their family, whatever.
Absolutely. And sometimes companies will kind of ask specifically, what is this offer if you have another offer. And so just, trying to be as transparent as you can. We try to be, share as much as we can just to make sure, some companies, will think it's just a negotiating tactic. But if you have something, be as honest and upfront as you can with us. That'll help us, want to connect with you maybe in the future. If this one doesn't work out, maybe in the future, I think that's important as well. And so I wanted to talk about some 5 pieces of advice. We've kind of been touching on this all throughout, but here's some pieces of advice for the candidates. Number 1, since we're talking about ghosting, do not ghost interview, avoid burning bridges. And Nicki, what thoughts would you have on that?
Well, as I mentioned before, once you get in contact with the recruiter and you're excited about the role, the recruiter's excited about the role, and it's something that you're interested in, or maybe not that interested in, be very honest, be transparent, and communicate your needs and your wants and what's most important to you. And sometimes, like Megan said, you can become a little nervous about leaving a position. But again, as we mentioned prior, you know, we're the recruiter, we're advocating for you. This is not the interview. We're trying to help you make that next step, try to bridge that connection. And it's okay to be honest with us. We can take it from there and trust us with it.
Yeah, and I think as a recruiter, you can tell when someone is just being a little bit not upfront and
Yeah.
but if you have a good experience, even if you don't place a candidate and they are willing to be upfront and just not ghost you, but just kind of give you some professional ways to say they're not interested, that just goes a long way. And Megan, kind of number two here, what are some professional responses? Then how to communicate rather than ghosting.
Sure. I think for one, if you have confirmed and committed to an interview, show up. And if in that interview process you realize like this is just not the right fit for me, there's definitely a good way to communicate that so that you're not burning those bridges in the future. So you can even write like a thank you note to the interview team that us as the recruiters can pass along, and just kind of like a thank you so much for your time. But as of right now, this isn't the right fit for me. I think that goes a long way, because you just never know in the future if you're going to end up interviewing with that company again for another opportunity that you might be interested in, or even end up working with some of the interviewers that, held that time with you. So I think that's a great way to kind of communicate you're appreciative of their time, but this also isn't the opportunity for you right now.
Yeah, and even I think, if I just wonder, obviously, some candidates may say, well, they have an offer, they maybe decide that on an offer, and then just decide not to show up for an interview. I think it would be important to say, hey, I've got this offer, I'm not interested anymore. You can communicate that via email, text, just communicate. I think in anything, communicate. Just, let us know. Rather than ghosting. I think it just goes a long way. And Nicki, when you are talking with, it seems like right away you develop rapport with your candidates, and you really want them to voice their needs clearly.
Absolutely. It is a top question. What is important to you out of your next position? What are you looking for? What's motivating you? Let me get all of that information right off the bat. That is how I like to start my conversations, because then, and as we go down, speaking about the requirements and qualifications of the role, more begins to connect, and you can see why this is important to them. So yes, tell me what's important for you out of benefits, out of flexibility, out of commute, out of hybrid, remote. Let me know what is important to you. So if this is not the right position for you, we can continue to work together. Maybe that right position across my desk, and I'm like, I have the perfect person for this role, and I give you the call first.
Absolutely. Feel free. Don't be shy. Feel free to come up to our door, so to speak, and say trick or treat. Right? It's October. It's Halloween. Do not be shy. Now, Megan, you had some thoughts. Obviously, a lot of times with candidates, they're working with their company, and maybe their company really wants to keep them, and they come up with a counteroffer. But you should really be wary of that, right?
Yes, I think it's really important to remember why you were looking in the first place. Counteroffers are kind of a good way to kind of appease you for the moment, but it's not going to solve whatever issues are kind of there long term. So just remembering why you were interested in the first place, whether it was to expand upon your skills, to have more flexibility in your schedule, that work-life balance, whatever it was that initially made you look, kind of seeing past the counter offer, the money piece that can be really appealing, and just remembering the end game and kind of the goal in sight. And then another thing too, just not being afraid to make that next step, and understanding that like resigning is not something to be afraid of, which I think is our next point.
It is. That's a great transition, Megan. With that, yeah. I mean, you may feel the need, and a lot of people, when they've worked at a company for a while, they have that fear of well, this company's going to fall apart without me. And there's a lot of feelings you don't want to leave it. Nicki, talk about that a little bit, and why it's okay to move on in your career if it's your career.
Absolutely. I speak to a lot of candidates, and of course, they have, strong resumes with a good background at great companies, but it is something that is behind them, motivating, looking for a new opportunity. And that is one of their top worries. And they most of 9 times out of 10, they're telling me, I'm really loyal. I really like the people I work with. I really like the company. And then they go into the reasons, why, they're open to new opportunities. When we get to that point, where I can feel them hesitating a little bit, I begin to remind them about our conversation prior, and just say, I know it's scary. I understand, you have people depending on you. You've built great relationships at your current, with your current employer. And but you have to do what's best for you and your family. Do you remember mentioning this to me? So just kind of reminding them of our prior conversations and reiterating it. And it's okay, because life is full of changes, and sometimes changes come. When changes come, you have to make that step.
Especially if it's for your career, just kind of taking that bull by the horns and saying, I'm going to do this for myself. It's okay to do that, giving your self permission to do that. And if you need a little bit of help on that, Megan, we can also, as recruiters, provide that help with like resignation letters, things like that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely situations where I've helped a candidate like write their resignation letter, or just kind of given them a template to make their own. Another thing too is just giving advice about when to submit their resignation, making sure that it will align. Like if they know that sometimes the company that they work for, once a person gives a resignation, like they kind of end up ending the role that day, or if they do honor the 2 weeks. So just working with them and how to navigate that situation so that they're not going a week without, compensation, or that they can plan ahead so that they can take some time before starting their new role. So just kind of helping them throughout that process. Like we're not just there to help them with, getting started and submitting them to a client. We're also there kind of in their resignation process with their current role. So just really being there from A to Z, I think, is important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Use us as much as you can in that process. That's what we're here for. Definitely willing to do that and help you have a smooth transition. And, I appreciate, everyone listening. We're going to go ahead and have focus every single month and really share different points to really help candidates and share what we're doing as well. So this has been Manpower Great Lakes team. Appreciate Megan. Final thoughts.
I hope you all have a beautiful October.
Well done there. Well done. Wow. What about you, Nicki? Any final thoughts?
Happy Halloween. And this is great. I enjoyed myself.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to take that next step in your career. That's what we're here for. So once again, this has been Manpower Great Lakes team October focus, candidate ghosting, and why to avoid as a candidate. This is your host, Andy, Megan, and Nicki. Thanks again.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.